T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
Welcome everyone to this episode of the Palmetto Guardian. I'm Sergeant Chelsea Weaver, and today is going to be a little bit different than our normal podcast. So if you're listening to this, welcome back. If you're watching this on YouTube, sorry, there's not an actual video. We're doing just audio currently because the studio is finally under construction. I know we mentioned that a couple months ago, but it's finally happening. So we're still going to be posting these to YouTube. We're just going to be using graphics. That way that we can still push out the content and information to everybody. So welcome everybody back. And it's just going to look a little bit different, but thank you for joining us and being patient with us during this time. I have a very special co-host with me today. I'm going to let her introduce herself, and then we're going to bring in our guest.
Hey everyone, my name is Hallie Weaver. I'm a 7th grader from Pleasant Hill Middle School, and I'm going to slay.
Awesome. So yes, Hallie Weaver, she is, we have the same last name, obviously. She's my stepdaughter, and she is here job shadowing for the day. And what better way to break her in with public affairs than a podcast? So I'm excited to see how she does with this. But we have a guest with us today, and we're going to kind of talk about her story and see her journey through the Guard. And I'm going to let her introduce herself, and then we're just going to ask some questions.
Hey guys, my name is Candidate Daley, and I'm from Chapin, South Carolina.
Awesome. Well, thank you for stopping in with us. I know you've kind of been bombarded the last couple of days with people asking questions and interested in your story, and we're glad that you were able to stop by and do this podcast with us. So can we kind of start out with what made you want to join the South Carolina National Guard?
It definitely was always in the back of my mind growing up. The military life always kind of attracted me. I'm the first of my family, sibling-wise, to join the military. I'm also part of a blended family. I have 6 siblings.
That's a lot.
It is definitely a big group, bunch of us. But yeah, I've always been really interested in the military aspect of life. I just never thought, for some reason, I never thought it was a possibility for me to do it. I never knew for sure what I would want to do in it growing up. But when I had one of my mentors, General Brad Owens, come up to me when I was in Oregon, I quickly realized it was a possibility to do it.
Were there specific things that made you feel that it wasn't, or maybe just the unknowns?
Definitely the unknowns. I didn't have a whole lot of information on it, specifically for what I wanted to do in the Guard. I didn't know anybody that could tell me or guide me, and it wasn't until later that I got my mentor to guide me into the Guard.
How did General Owens become a mentor towards you?
I've known General Owens for a good bit. He actually is a patient of my dad's. My dad's a dentist in the Irmo area. He owns a practice. And my dad loves to brag about me. And he was in the office one day, and my dad mentioned that I think that's when I completed my commercial rotary helicopter license in Oregon. And immediately I got a call from General Owens being like, I remember you kind of wanting to join the Guard. What about now? And from there, him and I were talking over the phone a lot, and that's where he introduced me to Chief Cox as well.
Interesting. So how did you end up in Oregon?
That is a funny story. So growing up, soccer was a massive part of my life. I mean, I started at age 4 and didn't stop until I graduated high school. But growing up throughout high school, for me, college wasn't like, what degree do I want to major in? It was, what school do I want to play soccer at? And senior year rolled around, and I was like looking at all these schools for different possible scholarships. I was realizing, I was like, I don't even know what I want to major in. I was like, I have no idea what I want to major in. I'm just looking at the easiest major so I can focus on soccer. And then I realized, well, what am I going to do after soccer? Because that's a big thing. And that's when I was like, that's okay. I'm not going to go very far in soccer. I mean, after college, there's only a small possibility I go professional. And that's when I honestly kind of just dropped everything. Everyone was like, whoa, why is she, like, she has great opportunities in soccer to take it far. And I was like, I think I want to pursue another passion. And I always kind of had a passion for aviation. Honestly, I didn't know much about aviation. I just knew that I was always the 3-year-old kid at 18 waving at the helicopters and planes that flew above me. And that's when I started researching flight schools. And there's 2 different flight schools you can go to as a civilian. It's could be wrong here. I always forget. It's like Part 61 or Part 141. Part 61 is just flight school. No degree comes with it. And Part 141 is you get a degree and you get your licenses. I decided to go the Part 61 route because I wanted to get it done as fast as possible because sometimes I can be a little impatient.
Yeah.
And that's when I found a tiny school in a town called McMinnville, Oregon. Family owned, the owners of the school, great people. And that's when I moved there, I think like shortly after graduating in 2021 from Chapin High School. And moved there, like drove across the country with just me and my dog and moved into a random house with random people that were also pilots. Next day, I started my private license. I knew nothing about flying, but the next day I moved to Oregon, I was already flying a helicopter.
That's crazy. So when you first enlisted, let's kind of go back because I have tons of questions now that you're like, you're saying all these things.
Story.
Yeah. So like when you first enlisted, what did you enlist? Like at that point, did you already know you wanted to be a pilot, or did you enlist in a different MOS and then kind of found that area of the Guard, I guess?
So when I first enlisted, at that point, I already had my private instrument, commercial, and certified flight instructor in rotary wing helicopters. That is when General Owens and I were talking more, and I was talking to Chief Cox about moving back to South Carolina to, take the ASVEB, take the SIF test, see if I have the opportunity to even go in front of the South Carolina Aviation Board. And that's when I was talking to Chief Cox, he was like, it'd be best if when you enlisted, you went in as a 15 Papa flight operations specialist. And that's exactly what I did. I joined the military, I guess you could say, swore in on January 10th of 2023.
Oh, wow.
I went in front of the South Carolina Aviation Board January 12th of 2023. And that's when they accepted me to send me to flight school. And then I left for basic at Fort Jackson shortly after.
So you just went to basic training. You haven't done any kind of advanced training or MOS training or anything like that?
Nothing. And that's like the big but the biggest concern with me going in front of the board was my age, no military experience. The only close experience I had was all of my certifications from helicopters so far. So that was a kind of like a hurdle I had to jump in front of the board to prove to them that I was mature enough and would push myself far enough to get to where I am right now.
What made you want to be a pilot?
I would say, I think I was 14 the first time one of my dad's friends took me up in his plane and let me fly. And, he's a huge ego booster for me. I probably flew really, really bad, but he told me I flew great. And I was like, oh, I might have a knack for this. And as well, when I told my dad my senior year of high school, I was like, hey, I'm not going to go D1 for soccer. I want to go to flight school. At first, he was like, are you sure about this? This might be a bad idea. And he was telling my older sister, Shay, who is a big role model in my life, to convince me to stay with soccer. And I was like, not having it. And then my dad realized soon that I was done with soccer and I was pursuing this. And that's when he shared with me that I had no idea. My dad did serve before I was born. He was a 11 Bravo Airborne Ranger. And towards the end of his military career, he threw in a warrant officer packet and was accepted for flight school and warrant officer. But life got in the way. He ended up going to medical school instead, which the Army did definitely help out a lot with that. And once he told me he went the warrant officer route, I was like, okay, I'm going to flight school now. I want to be like my dad. I want to fly helicopters. And that was another reason, too, why I enlisted, because I was like, if my dad can do it, maybe I can do it, too.
That's crazy. So you went that whole time not even knowing any of that part of his life.
Yeah. He's very quiet about, everything he does. For the longest time, I didn't even realize that he was part of the USA ski team. I was like, oh, okay.
Well, that's nice to know, Dad. Thanks.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So, I know it's hard because growing up when you're involved in something or when you're good at something and you change your mind, it's hard to make others understand that reasoning and all of that kind of stuff. And so for your family to try to push you to keep pursuing soccer, I mean, from an outsider, I can see that because like with Hallie, she played volleyball and like she's kind of taken a break from it, I think. And we love watching her play and like watching her progress over the short amount of time that she played. And so it's hard to watch somebody not give up on it, but not continue to push themselves to it. But it's because of other things. I mean, she's super creative. The stuff that she's doing is insane. Like, I don't even know how she comes up with these ideas and draws these things and all that and like knows the stuff she knows. But like, I can kind of see and understand that. But like for your family, how does it feel, or how are they supportive towards you with this experience and like you completely going in the opposite direction, doing something that nobody else is really doing in your family and away from what they wanted you to kind of pursue?
Oh, for sure. They definitely, whenever I decided not to play soccer in college, I had plenty of coaches come up to me and say, "Are you sure you're making the right decision?" Like the first time they've ever questioned what I was doing, and even had some kind of like text messages from the college coaches that I was considering going to their colleges. And they were like, and I told them, I was like, thank you for the offer and the opportunities, but I'm going to go pursue a different career path. And they were like, are you sure? No. And I guess because like I was getting full ride offers. I was getting free college. And the fact that I was like, no, I'm going to go pay for flight school instead. I'm going to use the college money I saved up to go to flight school instead. My family definitely were, for the first like 3 weeks, they're like, you got a lot to do. Like you're moving across the country. Like this is a big step in journey. Are you sure you're ready for this? And then immediately when they decided that they knew I was ready, they were immensely supportive.
That's awesome, because that's the best. That's what makes it so much easier doing this job and being a part of the military, is having that support. Because when you don't have that support and you don't have people that understand, it makes it so difficult. And I mean, I've seen it, and it's heartbreaking because everybody has their own reason of why they're in this uniform. And for people who are close to you to not understand and respect that decision, it's so hard. So like having that family support is amazing.
Oh yeah. And that's why the military I enjoy so much, because like playing soccer for so long, I love being part of the team. Like my teammates, it's like a big thing for me. On the civilian side of flying, especially from what I saw, I know I was only in flight school and I only did a few jobs on the civilian side so far. It's very cutthroat. And I don't mind cutthroat. I'm a competitive person, but I also love a support team. And sometimes on civilian world, you're just competing for the better job. You're competing for the better pay. On the military side, from what I've seen so far, everyone is immensely supportive of each other, and it's a big team.
Absolutely. I mean, and the Guard is so special because you're a family. Like it doesn't matter what unit you're in or whatever, but like when we all come together, or when we go out and cover all these different events or different units and stuff, like we're all part of this bigger family that we don't really think of sometimes.
When you were in flight school, did you ever miss soccer?
For sure, I did. And there was a few times in there where I questioned. I was like, did I make the right decision? Because a lot of my teammates were playing college soccer, and I got to see, social media, I love it but hate it, because I got to see the good parts, and they were just having a blast. And then I would call them, and they'd be like, oh, this kind of sucks. Like, it's not as fun as it used to be. And that's why social media I kind of stay away from sometimes, because it can seem all glorious, but it isn't. But I for sure miss soccer, and I just kept myself distracted and found other hobbies. And Oregon is a beautiful state, and that's when I found hiking. Hiking with all my other friends and other pilots who were going through school with me. We would just go on hikes and bum questions off each other, and that was the best way to study.
I would love to visit Colorado one day, or Oregon, not Colorado. Oregon and Colorado, but yes, Oregon is definitely one on my list.
Just don't go in the winter. Oh my gosh.
Really? It's that bad?
It's depressing. You don't see the sun sometimes for like months, and you're like, oh my gosh.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. What made you decide that you wanted to fly helicopters versus airplanes?
Helicopters, you're always on the controls. You know, you got both feet on the pedals, you got a hand on the cyclic, and you got a hand on the collective. With airplanes, with the opportunities that I did have a chance to fly them, it was kind of like, oh, fun, like it's fun to take off and land, but once you're in the sky, you're kind of like just pushing buttons. With helicopters, once I did what you can do on the civilian side is see if you actually want to fly helicopters. It's called a discovery flight. And that's when you just go up and they hand you controls and you just go through all the motions, and I loved it. And the fact with the helicopter, you can land just about anywhere is amazing. I mean, we did a lot of cross countries in flight school, and that was when we got to land in some pretty insane places in the mountains, doing pinnacle landings and going to see Mount Hood, all these beautiful places, and I just love the opportunity you get with helicopters.
When you were flying helicopters, was there a certain one that you preferred to fly?
Mostly, I flew Robinson helicopters. On the civilian side, for flight school, that's what you're going to see majority. They're definitely, I called it the sky scooter because it's like the moped of the skies. They can be a dangerous helicopter if you don't fly it right, just because of the rotor system they have in it. But I mostly flew the R-66, which is a turbine, mostly what all the Army helicopters are. And then the R-44 and the R-22 are the little sky scooters, what I call them, the piston helicopters. And I really enjoyed the R-22, even though it was a moped, because I could put it anywhere, and it's so touchy. We had so many people, so many Army vets come in to get their civilian license that were Black Hawk, Apache pilots, Chinook pilots. And we would take them up in the R-22, and they were all over the place because they're so used to that stiff cyclic. And then with the R-22, you move it a little bit, and it's just like, okay, we're going to go to the left.
I'm glad you asked that, because one of my questions was going to be on the military side. Did you have a preferred helicopter that you wanted to fly versus what they're having you go to school for? Or were you kind of open-minded to really anything?
I really am open-minded to anything because for me, flying is what makes me happy. And then more I got into it, they're like, okay, you really kind of got to like choose one. I was like, okay, well, I really enjoy the UH-60 Black Hawk just because of the university it has with it. Like it's such a universal platform, whether it's long lining, rescues, or you're even like a little taxi driver. Mm-hmm. You know, with the Chinooks, you can do long lining with the Chinooks, but you're mostly a transporter. And then with the Apaches, you're attack. But with Black Hawks, you can almost get all three.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way. That really makes sense.
It also goes over into the civilian world. The transition's easier as well. If someone would like to be a National Guard pilot part-time and they want a civilian job flying and they also want a military job, if you fly a Black Hawk, you can most definitely fly a helicopter on the civilian side.
Yeah, that makes sense.
When you were in flight school, when you were flying the helicopters, was there any part that was like really scary?
Oh my gosh, yes. My first solo cross country, I decided, so you have to get certain certifications before you go in front of the examiner to get your private, commercial. And for one of them, it's like you need a solo cross country, you need a solo tower, meaning you go to an airport with ATC, air traffic control. And I decided to do all three requirements in my first solo, because why not, I guess. And it was really windy that day. And again, this R-22 is a tiny helicopter. I mean, when I fly solo in this helicopter, I have to put weights under my seat because I don't weigh enough to fly it.
Oh my gosh.
It was so windy, and I was getting thrown around. Like I was getting updrafts. Like I would be at 1,000 feet and a gust of wind would blow me to 2,000 feet. And I was a bit nervous, but then after like a few seconds of like, okay, I'm fine. I was playing some music over my headset, and I was like, this is actually kind of fun. And then talking to Tower for the first time solo, they always tell you your first time solo, tell Tower you're a student pilot. And it's a funny story because you only have to say it once, but I was nervous, so I said it after every one of my calls. So I'd be like, Tower, November 9015, Victor. I'm like 10,000, all this stuff. And I would say solo student pilot every time I talked to them. And they were like, hey, you don't have to do that. And I said, well, my instructor said I had to, so I'm going to keep saying it. Solo student pilot.
So you have your civilian license. You enlisted in the National Guard. You're going to warrant officer school. And then right after that, you're going to the pilot school. How do you feel about that? I mean, you've only been in like a year almost at this point. Like you haven't even really been in that long to experience a lot of the Guard yet. So like, how does that make you feel kind of enlisting and then just going full force into all of this?
I love it and hate it at the same time, just because I don't have the Army experience that all of my peers around me are going to have. And I know that some people will be super supportive, and I know there's going to be a few people. I mean, there's always some people like, it was given to me. Like, sometimes it feels like it was given to me, but I like just have to remind myself I did work for this. And I know it does make me nervous, just not the whole like flight school or warrant officer candidate school. It's more of just I've only been in the Army for 1 year. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing that's kind of like making me a little nervous.
Yeah. I think though too, especially going to warrant officer school beforehand, you can find a lot of mentors who have the experience and gain as much knowledge as you can from them. Because as far as I know and everybody I've encountered, everybody's super supportive and they want to help those next to them or whether they're lower ranking than them. But finding that support and those people who are willing to mentor you while you're there, because that's going to be a huge thing. But yeah, I mean, I can understand where you're coming from because it is a little intimidating, but obviously you did something right to get to where you are. And so to keep pursuing that versus to just sit around and kind of just expect things to happen, like that's just a waste of time. Like, you know what you want to do. You've already done it in the civilian side. Like, go for it. Don't worry about all the other stuff. I mean, it's going to come. Trust me. I've been in almost 13 years and I still learn something every day. Like, it's insane. So, like, I can understand that. I think it'll be fun too to see like when you come back. Cause I mean, flight school, that's a full year, isn't it?
About, depending on airframe, it's like 16, 18 months.
And then warrant officer school is
5 to 6 weeks.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're looking at almost 2 years. So, I mean, and it's going to go by so fast. So that's crazy.
I'm definitely excited for it. I'm like excited to cherish the moments. And yeah, going back on the support system for warrant officer candidate school, I was like, I have no idea what to expect. I don't know what I'm getting into. Of course, I had someone from the South Carolina National Guard that just got out of SEER school, and he's helping me out, answer some questions. And the class itself, we have a group chat just to help each other out for the packing list and making sure like our essays are done right, and everyone's helping each other out on everything that we need to do, prepare. And I'm like, I've never met these people, and they're being so supportive for me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So does your civilian training and experience transfer to the military?
Honestly, preparing me for flight school coming up, I truly don't think so, because I feel like it's going to be like two whole different things. I think on the ground portion, it might help in the beginning, but I'm going to go in there not acting like, but just with open-minded that I know nothing. I think it definitely will help a little bit on the ground school, though. And maybe when we first start hovering, if I might get it within the first day, I'm just going to be like, oh, whoa, that's crazy.
All right, so you going into school, do they know that you have your civilian license? Or can you kind of like keep that on the down low?
I'm not sure. I don't think they know. And the plan is to kind of just keep it on the down low, because for me, I don't think it'll help me too much. I feel like the military aspect and the civilian aspect, there's kind of some difference in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of like when I went. So when I first enlisted, I was an MP, and then I transitioned to public affairs. So when I went to reclass, I was full time. And so I had that experience, but I didn't want people to be like, oh, well, she knows it all or whatever, because I didn't know any, like, I mean, I knew some stuff, but it was the way that the military trains you, it's specific, because like at DINFOS, we train with all branches. So like we have Air Force, Army, Active, Reserve, Guard, Marine, Navy, like we have everybody. So like they have to grade us all on a standard baseline. So, and it might not be the same thing that we do here. And so like I didn't want to go around and being like, oh yeah, I'm a full-time technician. Like I didn't want anybody to know, because I wanted to learn and experience the same things that everybody else was experiencing, and not feel like people were looking at me that I was just good at everything because I knew the job. Like that was completely gone, like opposite, because we did things that we don't do here. Like I got to do the radio side of it for like AFNs and stuff. This is the closest thing we get to that that was the like most fun I had at school, was doing the radio class. But like, it's fun to go in and learn something, or a new way to do something that you already know how to do, because there isn't just one right way. Like, everybody has different things that works for them. But I'm sure as far as like the technical side and testing side, it might make it a little bit easier for you understanding terms, and like, I'm sure there's some kind of math and weather stuff involved. I don't know anything about aviation. I'm just guessing. But obviously some of that will help. But like you said, as far as learning how to fly that specific helicopter, like, it's not going to be exactly the same as in the civilian world, but you kind of have a small idea of what to expect.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, like the closest, probably the only help I'll get is like that, probably the very beginning when we're going over like aerodynamics and stuff. That's like probably where I'll be like, oh yeah, I know a little bit about this.
Mm-hmm.
But that's about it. The mentality I kind of stay with, especially right now, is I've only been in the military for like a year and 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just a nobody that I'm so thankful for the opportunity that the South Carolina National Guard gave me. And I'm going to take in all the knowledge I can and kind of just sit there, and anyone I talk to, it for me is like a mentor. I'm like, you've been in longer than me. You know more than me. I'm just going to listen to what you have to say.
That's an awesome way to look at it. I know we mentioned multiple times it's only been a year, but do you kind of see yourself making this into a career?
I would love to make it into the career. That's definitely like if someone asks me what do you see yourself in 10 years, I'm like, hopefully a W3.
Yeah.
W4.
So what advice would you give to someone who's thinking or is going to be a pilot?
It is definitely okay to know nothing. I knew nothing going into this about aviation. You don't have to be some crazy freak that knows everything about aviation. I knew nothing. I knew nothing about, honestly, did not know much about the Army when I joined either. And I think it only benefited me, because if you already know a lot, it's going to be hard to change you. We said that a lot, especially going through my certified flight instructor rating. It's definitely hard to teach older people than younger people, because older people are more knowledgeable and they think they know that that's the right way, but you're like, oh, well, it's kind of this way. So it's definitely okay to know nothing and be a little terrified.
That's great advice. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming in and talking with us. Hopefully when you get done with your year plus training, that you can come back and tell us about your experience and give some new advice to those who are listening and all that. But yeah, we enjoyed having this conversation.
Oh yeah. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Well, again, thank you everybody for being so patient with us during this time as we're kind of working through the kinks of our studio setup and all that fun stuff. But thank you for listening. If you like this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and we will catch you guys in next week's episode.